Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. One of the biggest misconceptions about experiential learning is that the teacher sits back and does nothing. People think, oh, the kids are just playing. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, teaching this way is harder than lecturing. In a traditional classroom, the teacher is the broadcaster. In an experiential classroom, the teacher is the architect and the safety net. We call this shifting from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. Setting the stage. The teacher has to carefully design the experience. If I just throw a bunch of lumber in the room and say, build a house, that's not education. That's chaos. The teacher has to scaffold the skills. They have to ensure the environment is safe enough to take risks, but challenging enough to force growth. The art of the debrief. This is the most critical part. Remember Dewey's point about reflection? The teacher acts as the facilitator of that reflection. After the field trip or the simulation or the science lab, the teacher has to gather everyone up and ask the hard questions. What happened? Why did your bridge collapse? How did it feel when the other team refused to trade with you? What would you do differently next time? Without a skilled teacher to guide that conversation, the learning evaporates. The teacher helps the students connect the dots between the fun activity they just did and the academic concepts they need to master. Why go through all this trouble? Why not just hand out the worksheets? Because the benefits of experiential learning are undeniable. 1. Retention. There is an old saying, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. When you physically engage with material, you are using more parts of your brain. You are engaging motor skills, emotions, and sensory input. That creates a much stronger memory hook. You will forget a definition you memorized for a quiz in a week. You won't forget the time you accidentally blew up a beaker in chemistry. 2. Motivation and engagement. Let's be honest, boredom is the enemy of education. When students see the immediate application of what they are learning, they buy in. It answers the why do I have to learn this question before it's even asked. It makes school feel relevant to the real world. 3. Real-world skills. The modern economy doesn't really need people who can memorize facts. We have Google for that. The modern economy needs people who can solve novel problems, work in teams, adapt to changing circumstances, and handle failure. You can't learn resilience from a book. You learn resilience by failing at a project and having to start over. Experiential learning is a simulator for adulthood. 4. Emotional connection. Learning is emotional. We learn best when we care. Experiential learning taps into feelings, curiosity, frustration, excitement, pride. When a student builds a robot and it finally takes its first steps, that feeling of pride cements the engineering concepts in their mind forever. Experiential learning isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It is difficult, and it faces a lot of barriers in the American system. 1. The activity trap. This is a trap bad teachers fall into. They plan a fun activity, like baking cookies to learn fractions, but they focus so much on the baking that the math gets lost. The kids have fun, they eat cookies, but they still can't add 1/2 and 1/4. Activity without intellectual focus is just recess. 2. It takes time. Lecturing is efficient. I can cover 200 years of history in an hour if I talk fast enough. A project takes weeks. In a system that is obsessed with covering content for standardized tests, teachers often feel like they don't have the luxury of time for deep, experiential projects. 3. It's messy and loud. Principals often like quiet classrooms where students are sitting in rows. Experiential learning is noisy. It looks chaotic. There is sawdust on the floor. Students are arguing. To an untrained eye, it looks like a lack of discipline, when in reality, it is productive struggle. 4. Assessment is hard. How do you grade a conversation? How do you grade a leadership struggle during a camping trip? It is easy to run a Scantron sheet through a machine. It is much harder to create a rubric that evaluates critical thinking and collaboration. It requires a lot more work from the teacher. Despite these challenges, the tide is turning. We are realizing that the 19th century factory model of school just doesn't cut it in the 21st century. We are seeing a resurgence of makerspaces in libraries. We are seeing a push for more vocational training, CTE. We are seeing universities prioritize internships over electives. We are realizing that we cannot just download data into kids' heads. We have to teach them how to navigate the world. Experientialism is about respecting the learner. It respects that students come to the table with their own experiences. It respects that they are capable of doing great things now, not just in the future. When I look at my own career as an educator, the days I felt most alive were not the days I delivered a perfect lecture. They were the days the classroom was a mess, the days there was cardboard everywhere, the days the students were arguing passionately about how to solve a problem, the days where I stopped talking and started watching them work. Think of the world as the ultimate sandbox. Experientialism is just giving students permission to jump in and start digging. It moves us away from the idea that failure is bad. In a traditional class, an F is a judgment. In an experiential class, failure is just data. It's just stage 2 of the Kolb cycle. That didn't work. Why? Let's try something else. That is the mindset we need to build. We need citizens who aren't afraid to try, who aren't afraid to get things wrong, and who know how to learn from their scars. So if you are a teacher, a parent, or just someone who cares about the future, look for the opportunities to stop talking and start doing. Put down the manual and pick up the tool. Close the textbook and open the door, because at the end of the day, you can read about gravity all you want, but you don't really understand it until you jump.